Hey everybody, David Schonecker, licensed professional engineer with the Avanti Group, coming to you talking to you about Hillsborough County and Plant City's collaborative workshop meeting that happened in late January. Um, I went to it. I want to talk to you about it. Okay, it's gonna be a long conversation, so I'm gonna do this in three parts. I actually did a tape it in like 24 minutes, and it turns out you can't upload that. So I'm gonna do this in three parts. Quick table of contents about this conversation, and if it's important to you, I highly recommend you listen, right? So this is a Plant City, unincorporated Hillsborough County workshop, planning workshop for the vision of the future of Plant City as it relates to Plant City and unincorporated Hillsborough County. Why does that matter? Well, if you're not from Plant City, maybe it still matters because you're in a county where it's growing substantially, more rural homesteads converting to a lot of apartments, townhomes, and tightly spaced home neighborhoods, right? If that's important to you, this is what we're going to talk about. In part one, less than 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about what the meeting was about, the polls, the surveys, the vision of the future, and the citizen comments, right? So let's get into it. Oh, by the way, in part two, we're going to talk about more details about cultural preservation. And then let's see here, what else? In part two and three, we're going to talk about different, how we control development, talk about imminent issues like traffic and flooding and things like that as it relates to Plant City, Florida, and Dover. I'm going to speak to that specifically. And why am I doing this? Well, I'm a licensed professional engineer with a 20-year career, and I'm 25-year career and a 20-year. I grew up in Brandon, not Plant City, but I understand Plant City. I worked for the farmers for 2 decades now, um, and I want to say some things, and I'm not the authority in them, but I want to say them, and I want to be helpful to my community in the future, right? So, part one, let's get into it. What was this meeting? This meeting was County Commissioners, Planning Commission, Hillsborough County Planning Commission, Plant City representatives like the vice mayor, the mayor. I don't really know all their positions, but parties associated with Plant City planning and growth and development, right? It was also some administrative staff that conducted the polls and was giving the presentation, right? So this was I went to it because I was curious. It's time for me to start getting involved a little bit with my new community since I moved here 2 years ago, and I was not impressed, and that's what I'm going to talk about, right? There was some citizens that did show up, and so there was some time in the beginning for citizens to talk. It was obvious that the citizen conversation had nothing to do with the planning commission and what they were there to talk about that day. Um, but it was a very fireworks start to it, right? So what happened first is that some citizens talked, right? The citizens, it was only like three, I think, that talked. Very emotional, very confrontational conversation about flooding, ongoing development, traffic. Basically, what are you doing to prevent my house from flooding? And quite literally, that was not discussed by the parties on the other side of the table, nor was it actually intended to. So, touche. But that the voice of Plant City is not what that meeting was about, right? But we're going to talk about it. So, some people talked and they have very emotional, real concerns, right? Then there was a presentation by Hillsborough County staff to the Planning Commission regarding surveys and data. So, what that means is like people in Plant City, I guess, were polled, and I didn't see the poll. Maybe I should have seen the poll, but I didn't. And they were asked questions like, where do you live relative to Plant City? Do you work in Plant City? How much time do you spend in Plant City? Your demographic, maybe some age demographics and things like that. And that data was presented, right? My take from that is that good, that was great. Thank you for doing that, planning commission. But it was very lackluster in representation. In fact, one of the professionals on the board, planning commission, said some negative things about that, right? Um, it was very low census numbers, probably more than likely, very likely to be underrepresented on the actual populations in Plant City. In fact, a lot of people that responded didn't live in Plant City, which doesn't make any sense to me why they'd be talking about Plant City, but they did. And that data was there, and that data is being used to tell you how to build Plant City, which is ironic to me, right? So the data was presented. You can look at the presentation, I'm sure, online. Hillsborough County Planning Commission probably has it online. Have a wall. It's very insignificant. to me in the conversation at hand, right? So some data was presented, and then the planning commission talked about the data. A lot of talking, nothing worth really repeating. A lot of negative stuff. I was glad to be witness to it. I was thankful that our government officials were meeting and doing this thing, but nothing significant, to be honest with you, about the data itself. Other than, let me share with this, I highly recommend that if you have the opportunity to do this or conduct future data, especially if you're concerned about Plant City and Dover and the surrounding areas, that you do participate because it does make a difference in the future, what we're about to talk about. So, what else was talked about? Let's see here: polls, surveys, vision of the future. So, the whole point of this is to talk about, the 25-year plan for Plant City, basically, and the surrounding areas, which includes much of unincorporated Hillsborough County as well in that conversation. And the vision of the future is growth, housing affordability, parks and recreation, utility infrastructure. Ironically, no talk about flooding and stormwater, but I'm going to talk about it. So there was talk about the vision of the future. This planning commission ultimately and the associated Plant City professionals are charged with creating a vision for the Plant City future, which will then turn into whatever it's going to be in terms of laws, rules, and changes regarding incentivizing and regulating future developments. Right. So that's the gist of what the meeting was about. Okay. I got a few more minutes. Let me speak in part one briefly about one part of that vision, right? It was cultural preservation. For some reason, there was a lot of talk in the polls and whatnot, and a lot of rhetoric about cultural preservation. So, what does that mean? Well, what is Plant City culturally, right? Everyone can have a different opinion, but in most cases, it's agriculture, strawberries, farmers, homesteads, things like that, right? That makes sense. It's what you visually see the last 4 decades in Plant City and Dover. But what they talked about was things like, let's put a sign, welcome to Plant City, and let's put a strawberry on it. And what does the town look like architecturally as you approach it and things like that. I don't know. So my discontent right now in part one is saying, listen, I don't think what's happening behind the scenes right now with regards to the polls and this idea of cultural preservation actually translate to what cultural preservation is. Like, what do we want the city of Plant City and the surrounding areas to look like 20 years from now? I doubt it's townhomes, apartments, high density housing, and some cute sign with a strawberry on it, right? I think we should be fighting or advocating that we should maintain more of our homesteads, that we should maintain more of our agricultural active farm activities. And that appears to be contrary and not in line with anything that is coming. I'll say the rest for part two. Hope this helps. God bless.